Aaron Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Breathe. As Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Facebook is just a turd sometimes, and if it goes wrong, it just cascades into total nonsense. So anyway, yeah, third time's a charm. So we're finally back up and running. Sorry about that. I don't know, whatever. I do the same thing every day, every time, and then all of a sudden Facebook decides it doesn't want to play nice. And I think it does it just to try to remind you of who's in charge. That's really no other reason, just to screw with you. Anyway, so we're back up and running now. So we're going to focus on the threat for severe storms for later this afternoon and evening. We're going to look at the latest data. It's actually pretty short because I got to get to the gym. We got a lot of things I got to do, and I'm sure you do too. It's a holiday weekend, right? And we all have a lot of activities going on. So first things first, look outside, reveals some sunshine. So a lot of sunny skies out there across Oklahoma. Look at those temperatures. I'm at 84 degrees already here in my Tempest weather system. So it's going to get a little toasty out there today. We'll probably get up about 90 here in Oklahoma City is the way things are looking. Now, if we take a look out there across the state right now, you can see temperatures are all into the 80s with the exception of maybe up here around Bartlesville and out here toward the Woodward area. Also down here into northwestern Texas, they're also up here into the 80s, upper 80s at that, and some 90s. Let's see. Apparently there's no sensors that want to work down here in this part of state, but this area here should also be close to 90 degrees. And that's where storms are actually going to fire first because they'll be breaking the cap down there. So that's kind of how things will start to get going for our late Saturday. Okay, so let me see here. We'll do this. Temperatures, like we said, over Oklahoma, close to 90 already. Then they're in southwest Oklahoma. And the humidity values are coming up because dew point values are returning into the 70s. So it's starting to feel a lot more humid. You can see 70s, 72, 71, 70 right here, 71. So this is the fuel we need for those thunderstorms to get going later on today. So these 70s will work their way back in and replace the 60s, and which will replace the 50s. And even the 40s, and even the 30s. Good grief, a dew point of 33. So we've got some dry air up across the northwestern part of the state that is going to be gradually being replaced with the moisture. Okay, if you look at the satellite viewpoint, you can see where we have already a little bit of enhancement in the cloud cover here across the Panhandle and into New Mexico. This is the leading edge of our jet stream position, along with the speed max and starting to get into the area of lift in the atmosphere out ahead of the next upper level shortwave coming through across the Rockies. So that's going to be what will start things off here in just a few hours. We already are seeing some bubbling Q down here into this part of Texas, and that is the indications where that will break the cap first to get some thunderstorms from developing. But lots of sunshine out here to heat the air up for today. So we've got the heat, and now we're going to add the humidity with those dew point values coming in, and then things are getting a little spicy around here as far as ingredients are concerned. So here's a look at the severe weather outlook here for today, and the Storm Prediction Center kept it as a moderate risk in red, and we talked about this last night. Why they don't go high is because the number of storms would not qualify. It's not a severity index, it's a number of storms in combination with severity. So if we had numerous upon numerous upon numerous, then yeah, it would go to a high. But in this case, they're expecting more discrete, isolated activity, therefore it stays in the moderate category. Doesn't mean anything. We're all going to get severe weather within this range. And if you notice in Dallas-Fort Worth, they extended it to the east. So you guys weren't in it last night. I think the west side of Tarrant County was in the green, but now the entire metroplex is at least in the slight, with some of that in the enhanced. So in other words, bottom line is they are expecting some severe weather in your neck of the woods as a result. Now, when you factor in just the tornado aspect, you can see the green to the brown here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so you're on the tail end of that, but you are included. And then, of course, the big area starts in northwest Texas here, stretches on up north and east, so it covers all of the major metropolitan areas here in the central parts of Oklahoma, which includes Oklahoma City, Norman, Edmond, all you guys up to Stillwater, Enid, Ponca City, even Tulsa and Bartlesville, and then in southern Kansas around Wichita. So this is your favorite area. In other words, where you can look at this map is where you see the red zone. That's the most favored area for tornadoes. Doesn't mean you won't get them outside of that red zone, but that would probably the most likely place for them is within this bounded region based off the indices that we have to look at and just the latest information from our morning data. We also have wind to deal with, although bulk of the strongest wind will be focused up here into Kansas and Iowa and the northern half of Oklahoma. And of course, hail is always on the docket as well. This will be some big hailstones too. The largest hailstones and the most concentrated ones will be up here into central and Kansas, up into far northern Oklahoma. But really, it stretches all the way down here south and west, including Dallas-Fort Worth. So roofers, they've got enough work to keep them going for 2 years probably with this year of severe storms across the plains. It's just been one thing after another. Highlighted from the National Weather Service also was some strong language for this evening, which means strong long track tornadoes are possible with any storm in the risk area, along with that softball size hail and damaging winds. So keep that in mind. This is a all severe mode, as we call it. In other words, all three are possible with any thunderstorm that develops in this environment. Here's a look at Tulsa, right around to Bartlesville. Again, same idea. Big hail, big wind, and yes, some tornadoes probably around. All right, now if we look at the AI model, I want to show you what it did last night, which is this guy right here. It shifted the little yellow and expanded it from central to southern Oklahoma, kind of anchored right along the Red River, like south of Lawton, Wichita Falls-ish. There's for the hail over here and the wind over here. Then this morning, I looked at the new data, and this is what it did. Not only did it kick up a notch, but it expanded its higher probability of tornadoes here across the body of Oklahoma. Same thing with the hail, and same thing with the wind. So it's a little different from the Storm Prediction Center. It focuses a lot more magnitude of events into Oklahoma versus into Kansas, likely due to more substantial low-level moisture here versus in Kansas. Can't speak on behalf of the artificial intelligence, but if I had to take a guess, that's where it's going. If you look at the analog data, it still favors tornadoes here, which pretty much lines up with where that other information had shown us. And if you look at the NATOcast, which is another AI early stages model that came out long before the others, pioneer in this field, still likes tornadoes in this area here for Missouri and Kansas, but also down here in northwest Texas. But if you'll notice, a lull in between, and that's because it thinks you're going to have two clusters of storms. You're going to have a clusters of storm here and a clusters of storm here, and then in between we have a weakness, meaning not nearly as much activity based off the newest model trends. We're going to show you that here right away. Matter of fact, I'm not going to waste my time showing you the setup of the atmosphere. We've done all that for days on end. I'm over it. So this is going to be coming up with just more of a mesoscale boundary feature for the afternoon to find out where the max dew point values have come into, where does the dry line set up, where do we have any surface convergence lines, etc. So this is the HER, let's see, as of the latest data. Still trying to form the dry line right out here along the Texas state line. We do have, looks like, as a theta E axis cranking in here with a southeast wind here, and also a south wind here out ahead of the dry line. So what this usually means is the dry line doesn't have a lot of convergence along it. So sometimes you can eliminate that, especially if there's not a lot of deep moisture. So this may not even be a factor today out here, whereas this little squiggly area may be the convergence line that we need to get storms to fire close to home. But again, we've talked about this for the last few days. That still hasn't changed in the data. The signal's still there. I do believe things will bubble up here first, just south of Wichita Falls to say Graham. Anyway, so that's a look at how the moisture is coming back in with those 70 dew points and temperatures this afternoon topping out. I think again we'll probably get close to 90 here in Oklahoma City, and there'll be some 90s definitely out here in southwest Oklahoma. They're already getting there now, especially out here in northwestern Texas, and that should be what basically breaks the cap so to speak. The HER, for example, has temperatures down here close to 100 degrees. Now, keep in mind that any of those storms that do develop in this region will probably high base as a result, meaning big hail and wind, but not tornadoes because there's not enough low-level moisture yet to do that. But it is at least to get the storms going first. Then they can get tapped into that deeper low-level moisture later. If you do look at the cap forecast, where you see the gray areas to slash white, this is where the cap has weakened considerably to at least allow an attempt to get some thunderstorm initiation. You do notice there's some stronger capping here in the Kansas because deep low-level moisture didn't quite make it there according to this model, although other models do have a little bit weaker cap than this one does because this one doesn't handle low-level moisture all that well anyway. So let's look at some outcomes, potential outcomes on the table. This is the Texas Tech WRF. What we're going to do is look at the take-home. We're going to look at all these and we're going to blend it together. Again, it shows that big cluster of supercells down here in northwest Texas, west of Dallas, by 4 o'clock, so an early start. All right, so there's 5 o'clock, and somebody's moving their way into North Texas and also into southern Oklahoma by the time we head to 6 o'clock. There's an attempt to get some stuff to develop up here in northwest Oklahoma and into Kansas. Other storms down here just south of Dallas as well. You go to the next hour, some of these cross over, get them these helicity tracks with them. These are still trying to get going up here and here by 7 o'clock. There's 8 o'clock. This particular model now has it broken down really kind of in that same idea with the 3 areas. So you've got one hot area here, a second one here, a third one here, and there may even be a fourth one somewhere down here if these storms don't fall apart, depending on how strong the cap is as they kind of work their way into it during the evening. But that's 8 o'clock, for example, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11, and midnight. Okay, so that sees that most of the storms will start to weaken by midnight, and they'll be pushing into far eastern Oklahoma. Same thing for Kansas. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of high-resolution models here. So the 3-kilometer NAM, which a couple days ago had such a strong cap it didn't produce anything, it finally caved and said, all right, we'll at least get a couple of supercell storms. So it favors that same kind of situation, one here, etc. So we'll see how this kind of evolves. Let's see here. Let's do this. So we go to, let's stop that, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10, 11, and midnight. So same similar time frame, same type of look. You have little clusters of cells, so not everybody's going to get storms, obviously, but those that are in those clusters would obviously deal with some pretty nasty storms. So let's take a look at the new herd. This would be completely different, believe it or not. It's flip-flopping all over the place, which is expected. So we just look again at the general take-home. This is 7 o'clock here. It's got a cluster of supercell storms in southern Oklahoma, some up here in the south-central Kansas. Here's 8 o'clock. So again on the southwest side here from Oklahoma City down to Lawton, etc., Wichita Falls, and this little guy up here probably northwest of Kingfisher. Again, they won't know the exact placement, so what we're doing is just looking at the general consensus here. 9 o'clock, it has little storms right along the I-35 corridor, and then those move east. There's 10 o'clock, and there's 11, and there's 12, and there's 1 a.m. So it's a little slower getting rid of them. By 2 a.m., finally it leaves the state, moves into Arkansas, etc., in Missouri. Now, at those overnight periods, those storms obviously weaken quite a bit compared to what they were prior to. So that's another issue there. Here's a bigger expanded view, so I include you guys in, let's go for the Dallas, and also, let's see, for Kansas as well. This is one of our experimental models, and 2, we can see how this also keep those clusters up. So right about here was 7, 8 o'clock, 9, 10, 11, 12, midnight. Some redevelopment there. Oh, late night, early morning, this particular model in southwestern Missouri. That like a pretty nasty helicity track for some hail and wind. Let's see here. Which one was I using? That one. Okay. Let's see if his brother has anything to say differently. There's that cluster again in northwest Texas. Are you kind of getting the summary here? Pretty much every model loves that cluster starting in northwestern Texas. And they deviate. And Dallas almost gets split in half. It kind of goes north and south of you. Just like for Oklahoma City, it kind of goes south of us and north of us for most of the activity. So that seems to be a split consensus in the recent model data that we've looked at that shows, although we are going to get some storms, it looks like they're going to have some favored areas in which they propagate through. Let's see, so this one does at least a little bit of activity through central Oklahoma at 7 o'clock. And then there's 8, 9, 10, 11, midnight, etc. All right, so, and then over the weekend, Sunday, storms are in eastern Oklahoma, far eastern Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and southeastern Missouri. Otherwise, back into the 90s, so it's a very hot day here. Otherwise, a little bit better for Memorial Day, but then way better later on in the week. So that was just a short kind of a summary. So bottom line is nothing's changed. We still have the risk of tornadic storms coming up later on this afternoon and evening across the southern plains. So right now, kickoff looks to be in 2 areas. So one is in southwest Kansas, far northwest Oklahoma, around 5, 6 o'clock. That would start to bubble up, then move to the east and northeast. And then we look into northwest Texas, and those looks like they may start as early as 3 o'clock to 4. Those would also move east and also northeast. And so then from there we deviate. It's kind of like how many of those storms have a chance to get going in Oklahoma in between those 2 areas, right? The other thing is, with these being high-based and the storm structures the way they will be and the shear in the atmosphere, we're going to have some left movers and right movers. So left movers is a left-moving supercell. In other words, if your path is, say, northeast, all right, let's say the environment, the wind field says everything's going to move northeast today. Well, a left mover will move left of that track. So instead of moving northeast, it moves due north. Okay, just like a right mover, instead of moving northeast, moves due east. So that's the only difference is, all right, and that's just depending on the rotational characteristics in the storm. Now, a left mover, those typically are hailers. Very, very rare to get a tornado out of a left mover. The right movers are the ones that typically produce all of the threats. Now, if you notice in the data, we had some left movers that would work their way from Wichita Falls to Lawton to Oklahoma City area by 6 and 7 o'clock in some of the data. All right. Now, if that was the case, that would help to lower the tornado threat a little bit. And then those right movers, which continued across North Texas, southern Oklahoma, far southern Oklahoma, and those ones that were just southwest of Dallas, then moving southeast, those are right movers. And then you had the ones that were in southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma that developed. Those are doing east, so those are right movers. So those are your more favored regions for tornadoes based off model output. Now, does that mean that Oklahoma City is free and clear for a tornadic thunderstorm? Not at all. Remember, we're looking for signals in the data, and we're looking for ways that this outcome can evolve if you really want to get specific. So in other words, if I wanted to go out on a limb and guarantee you a forecast based off all the data that I looked at, and this is where I'd fall on my face, I wouldn't do it. But if you really wanted to get the kind of answer that you're asking in this type of situation, it's really not possible. But what I would do is I would look at that signal from all the models that we looked at. Now I said, okay, for today, I think the tornadoes will be across the northern third of Oklahoma along those counties that after those storms mature in northwest Oklahoma and move closer to I-35 on the other side to Wichita and Kansas. All right. Then I would say the secondary area for tornadoes would be along far southern Oklahoma, along those southern 2 county in from the Red River. And then on the opposite end of the Red River, there's the next 2 counties in. So basically plus and minus 2 counties on the side of the Red River for those tornadic thunderstorms. Then the secondary batch would be just southwest of Dallas with those storms that developed in that third area down there. And then everywhere else in between, if you happen to get a storm, it's wind and hail. All right, so that would be a solid forecast to bake on the model data we looked at here for today and yesterday. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, the problem is, what happens if you get a storm that produces a tornado outside of those areas? And that's where you kind of get, well, how do you word that, right? So I can tell you the most favored areas, according to the data, seem to be in those spots. That said, the environment across the entire state is conducive for large hail, damaging wind, and tornadoes. So yes, that does mean you still in Oklahoma City, Edmond, etc., the whole metro area, central Oklahoma, all together, still has to be on the lookout because any storm that comes in this environment has the potential to become tornadic. What we'll get into the minutiae, the details, is, like I said, if it's the left mover, and how does the structural look of the storm. Those are now term conditions. In other words, I can tell you that once they get developing, as they're moving, and then the forecast from an hour to 2 hours after that. But at this stage in the game, all I can tell you is you're still going to have to kind of be paying attention out there. That everybody needs to be on their guard for tornadoes. These will be strong. Some may be violent, given the shear that's out there in the atmosphere. So the message has not changed. The areas of discussion really haven't changed. There's been a little massaging where Dallas-Fort Worth was included, all of it, instead of just the far western fringe. Guys in the southern third of Kansas as well. Otherwise, wind and hail for Kansas and Missouri for any of those storms that do move through. This is pretty significant setup as far as all the parameters are concerned, with cape and shear, instability, dew point values, wind direction at the surface. All that is important. The position of the upper level low or trough axis for the short wave, that's all important, and that all seems to be lined up for a classic severe weather event. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what unfolds. So bottom line is, always make sure you have multiple ways to get warnings. So make sure you have a NOAA weather radio. If you don't have one, I've got one linked in the description. You can click on it. It's from my Amazon store. It's the one I use. Simple, easy, cheap. It's like $30 or so. You can grab that one. My weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It's free. It's on Apple and Google Play. You search for Aaron Tuttle or AT's Weather. It should show up at the top of the list. It'll predict tornadoes before the National Weather Service issues an official tornado warning in most cases. Let's see. It just basically just gives you more time to get ready is what it does. And gives you a heads up if you're not paying attention, because they'll really alert you way ahead of time that something's coming your way. And then what else? Oh, I'll be streaming live for tornado coverage probably. Once it gets in Oklahoma, so we're probably starting maybe 6 o'clock, 5:30 at the earliest. But I say that with a caveat in case it gets going a little faster and the storms move a little quicker. Oklahoma City, as far as timing goes, I've had a lot of people ask me, okay, when is it coming in, et cetera, et cetera. We're fine until 6 o'clock at the very, very earliest, and it's more likely going to be 7 or 8 before they arrive into our area. So that's helpful for planning. And then anytime from really 9 o'clock on across the eastern parts of the state for Tulsa, northeast Oklahoma, all that kind of stuff. And northern Oklahoma as well, also into that after 6 o'clock time frame, because we have to see how those storms out in northwest Oklahoma develop. If they move kind of into Kansas first, or some of them kind of stay moving east, so we'll kind of track those. But that's when your time window opens up. Otherwise, we got the rest of the afternoon to get out there and do some stuff, run some errands, etc. Like I said, everything quiets down right around midnight or so, and then most of Sunday looks pretty good for most of us. I didn't look any detail, honestly, beyond and for Sunday. And let me think. I paid very little attention because I was kind of focused on today, but let me just look real quick, see what the NAM had thought Sunday would do for us. Anything at all? No, it keeps few storms, weak storms out here across the far eastern fifth sliver of the state, and that's about it. Let me see if it does anything for you guys in Arkansas on Sunday. All right. So Sunday, yeah, it's got a few storms for you going through late in the evening when you're asleep anyways. So that's good. And we'll go up here to Missouri. Okay. So a lot of storms in here for Saturday for you guys right here for the late night tonight into early tomorrow morning. And then on Sunday afternoon, just a few scattered thunderstorms, a lot weaker than the ones you'll have later on tonight. There's 8 p.m., so there's some storms there. So a lot of activity kind of redevelops twice in Missouri. So a busy day for scattered showers and storms. Mostly, again, wind and hail for most of you guys. All right, let's go to North Texas. Like I said, here's your big cluster of storms for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If they hold together and they don't split the difference, in other words, north of town and south of town, like some of the data indicated, there's 9 o'clock, was 8 o'clock to 9, storms rolling through. Let's see here. And then there's another little batch early Sunday morning, 5 a.m. And then for Sunday, you're looking good. And that's it. And then Monday, for Memorial Day, looks like some thunderstorms redeveloping out here in northwestern Texas, staying out in this area. That's the first time I've seen any indication of some severe weather for Monday in anywhere close to us, so that's a little bit of a change, but otherwise that's a pretty isolated area. In Oklahoma, Like I said, for Sunday we're quiet, and I believe Monday also we're quiet. The Panhandle looks like it's going to have a little activity for late Monday afternoon and evening, but these look like they're very weak storms, and they're probably going to be high base, starved of moisture. Let's take a quick look here. Yeah, this sounding right here is super dry. So, all right, it's nothing at all tornadic. Very limited coverage if that even happens at all. All right, so that's good news. In other words, we got to get through this evening for a sweet spot from 6 to midnight here across Oklahoma. Large hail damage and wind, a few tornadoes around. Some of those will be strong, could be violent. Again, violent is an EF4, EF5. So all these on the upper end. We've been lucky. Most of the tornadoes that we've had a a lot here, believe it or not, this spring compared to the last few years. Last few years, we've really had a lull in the activity, believe it or not. This one, we've actually had true supercell tornadoes, not this QLCS squall line. You know, was it one? Was it wasn't? Kind of a deal. So we've actually had true supercell type tornadoes. Those are back here in the plains this year. After everybody said, did our the tornado alley move east? Because we've really been lucky the last few years. Just haven't had a lot of activity here. Well, obviously that changed for this year, and we made up the difference. So we're not quite at 100 tornadoes across the state. We're getting there. And we go through pretty long droughts where we see an EF4 or EF5. So you can always use the old school non-statistical emotional human component of we're due, right? Or you can kind of look at statistics and go, yeah, there's a cycle here. It's not uniform, not linear, but there is a period where you do go through droughts and then you do get one. So at some point we will. Is this going to be the system to do it? I don't know. I do know that the ones that we've had so far, the big ones that we've recorded from storm chasers and off the radar, have gone over a lot of open area. Thank goodness. We did obviously a few hits, though, that were the larger ones that did hit a couple of communities and towns earlier this spring. So from the Barnsdale up in northern Oklahoma. And then we had the ones in southern Oklahoma, Marietta, Ardmore, and east from there, Holdenville. So we've had a few of those stronger tornadoes in that area to near violent ones. I think the Barnsdale was recalculated, I believe, to a very small section of it, to an EF4. So we have not had an EF5 in a while. It'd be nice to never have another one, but we'll see what happens with that one, with that category here as the season winds down. There's been a lot of other tornadoes across the central and southern plains too, so it's not just Oklahoma, but it has been a pretty active year. But we are starting to close it down because it is the end of May, so as we transition into June, everything will start to shift to our north. And they'll actually get any potential tornadic activity across the northern plains and then into Canada, believe it or not. Southern Canada, Manitoba area, we'll usually actually see a few cross over into their region as we head into mid to late June, whereas we here in Oklahoma start to dry out. In Texas, we get the cap that builds in, the big high heat dome, we call it, the big ridge aloft that starts to shut things down. And at that point, we just look for occasional squall line events that come in off Colorado or something that will bring us a good widespread area of rain, but sometimes it comes with a little bit of wind that we don't like. Some small hail or medium-sized hail. All right, that is it for me. I'll be around again later on this evening watching things, and I'll be going on live as soon as it looks like tornadoes become a problem, so I can keep you guys safe. All right, thanks for tuning in, checking in, like and share the video, supporting me any way you like. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, all that kind of stuff so that you are loaded on social media, and we'll do this again soon. All right, take care, everybody. See you later.